It's been like 3 or 4 months since I announced on this channel that I was entering a little fat loss phase and starting a little fat loss journey, and I was planning on losing some fat, and I feel like it's time to give you a little update on that. So just to give you guys like a very quick background on kind of my weight journey so that you have reference for where I currently am, and my health journey so that you understand everything that I'm about to say after this. Since graduating college 3 years ago now, up until about January, I was consistently about 115 to 120 pounds when I was training regularly and, you know, living my normal healthy lifestyle. In January, when I was probably roughly around 120 pounds to start after not really exercising, when I started exercising again, and suddenly my weight started increasing. As I was increasing my activity back to like a normal level, things started to feel a little bit off. Not knowing my starting weight, I think I gained somewhere between about 5 and 8 pounds fairly rapidly, like over the course of maybe 2 months. And I didn't think much of it other than, hey, I'm gaining some weight. Maybe I should try to stop gaining weight and maybe lose some of the weight that I gained. And so I embarked on my fat loss journey. And I kind of continued gaining weight for the first month of actively trying to lose fat, and then I plateaued, and then I started to see some progress. But in the last couple weeks, I have not been successful at trying to lose fat. Let's just put it that way. And here's the thing. I have been making some of the most common weight loss mistakes that I see happen, and things that I talk to my clients about frequently, and things that like I know are mistakes, but I've been making them anyway. So today I wanted to chat through the 5 biggest mistakes that I have been making in these last couple months that I'm pretty sure are what has prevented me from being able to lose this excess fat that I gained. These are things that I see all the time, things that I have worked specifically with clients on, and so I felt like it'd be useful for you guys if any of you are trying to lose fat and you're stuck and you're like, why is this not working? And one last thing before I do get into it, I just want to clarify, because I feel like this needs to be clarified anytime you talk about weight loss. I do not dislike my body right now. Like, I love my body in any shape or form. After going through topical steroid withdrawal, I learned to love my body at a much deeper level than how it looks. There's absolutely nothing wrong with how I look right now. I just personally prefer my physique a little bit leaner, which is why I was actively trying to change it. So with that being said, hopefully that is clear. Give this video a thumbs up if you're excited to learn about the top 5 fat loss mistakes that I have been making on my fat loss journey that have prevented me from losing fat. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to follow me along the rest of this journey, wherever it may go. Without further ado, mistake number 1. Mistake number 1 is something that I literally preach all of the time, which is why I'm kicking myself for falling into this trap too. But it's the fact that I think I've been working against my health. I say this all the time. If you prioritize health, the aesthetics will follow. If you disregard your health and just prioritize aesthetics, you may or may not reach your aesthetic goals, but you're gonna tank your health in the process regardless. Retrospectively, I likely started gaining weight so rapidly because my cortisol was still imbalanced after mostly recovering from topical steroid withdrawal. I didn't give my body enough time to finish healing from topical steroid withdrawal and to finish regulating all of the different hormones that it caused to be out of balance. I also quit birth control, hormonal birth control, like 2.5 months ago, and I have not gotten my period back yet. Now, to be fair, at the time, I had no idea that either of these issues was going on. So it's not like I knew that my body was super out of balance. I was like, I'm gonna try to lose fat anyway. I assumed that since my skin seemed to have healed from topical steroid withdrawal, that I was fully healed. And I also assumed that when I came off of hormonal birth control, I was just gonna get my period back and it was not gonna be a big deal. Retrospectively, these assumptions were clearly incorrect, but I did not have a way of knowing that at the time. But what I should have done was wait just a little bit. I should have made the connection that rapid weight gain was probably due to some underlying issue, not just like, oh, I ate an extra bag of cookies and now I have gained 8 pounds. The thing with health and fat loss is that if you are optimally healthy, fat loss becomes so much easier. You stop working against your body. Your body is so much more willing to lose fat when everything else is in balance. Think of fat as like your body's armor. I mean, that's not really what it's like, but like especially in circumstances where your cortisol is being misregulated and maybe your hormones are also kind of out of whack. Your body's not gonna wanna let go of excess fat until those things are kind of more sorted out. And so if you have those underlying issues going on, but you're trying to push fat loss, you're gonna be fighting against your body, and it's gonna be a lot harder to achieve your goals. And not only is it gonna be harder to achieve your goals, but you may actually make those imbalances worse in the long run, which is gonna make it almost impossible to sustain that in the long run. And then in the last month or two, realizing that these issues may be at play made it literally impossible for me to stick to any sort of a deficit, because I would be like 3 days into a deficit week and I would start to be a little bit hungry, and then I'd tell myself, well, you shouldn't be in a deficit anyway because you haven't gotten your period back, your cortisol is probably still out of balance, like being in a deficit isn't a good idea right now, go eat the extra food. And then I'd be like, well, you're right. It was very difficult to stay in a deficit and keep doing something that was hard to do when logic and reason were telling me that I shouldn't have been doing it anyway. So my takeaway tip from this for you guys is, if you have any sort of health issue, hormone imbalance, gut issue, whatever it may be, prioritize fixing that first. Because in the process of fixing that, you may just lose the fat without even trying, honestly. I've seen that happen a bunch of times. And even if you don't lose fat in the process, even if you have to gain fat in the process, losing that fat and keeping it off is going to be so much easier once your whole body is in balance. My second big mistake is that I had literally zero consistency. What I should have done is establish a consistent workout routine before even thinking about putting myself in a calorie deficit. After almost a year off of training, I did not have the discipline to like just dive straight back into a consistent workout routine. And I honestly got way too excited about getting back into lifting that I think I was pushing myself to be more consistent and disciplined than my body was ready for, than my mind was ready for. Like, you guys know how much I love lifting, and I think I just got swept away in that love for lifting and didn't, work on rebuilding the other important things. I honestly thought that since I didn't have that much fat to lose in the first place, it would be a really quick and easy process like it had been for me in the past. But here's the thing, if you can't be consistent for like 6 weeks, you're not gonna see change and results. I was not at the place where I was ready to be disciplined and consistent for even 6 weeks. Once I started, I had no consistency in my programming or my diet, and I didn't give anything enough time to work, which is like one of the biggest reasons you need to be consistent, is that things take time to work. But I think because for some reason I had it in my head that it would be just as easy to lose fat this time as it was last time when I did Project Comeback, that if I wasn't seeing a change in 1 week, I was clearly doing something wrong and I needed to change something, which I know is like the dumbest thing, because 1 week is literally nothing. Like, no one should expect to see change in 1 week. If you see significant change in 1 week, you are an outlier or you're pushing things way too hard.
So like, do something for 1 week, not see changes, panic, abandon ship, lose all motivation,
and just like start that cycle over and over and over, which I know is gonna sound very familiar to a lot of you. So I have 2 takeaway tips from this mistake, and that is, 1, have consistency in your routine before you add the final factor that is going to get you to actually lose the fat, which is the calorie deficit. If you're not already consistent with your exercise, your sleep, if you're not managing your stress well, if your diet is like all over the place, get those things in line first, be consistent with them, then you can do your deficit cycles. And then tip number 2 is, don't be dumb like me and change everything after 1 week of not seeing results because you're like, why am I not seeing results? It's been a week. You're not gonna see results in a week. Just go into it not expecting anything for like 3 weeks. If it's been 4 weeks and nothing's changing and you've been consistent, like truly consistent, then it might be time to reevaluate. But after 1 week or even 2 weeks of not seeing changes, you're not doing anything wrong. It just takes more time than that. Mistake number 3, I think, also kind of came out of my overwhelming excitement to be getting back into fitness and to start lifting again and just to feel like my old self again after not working out for like a year. And the mistake was that I set my expectations for myself way too high. I definitely thought I would regain my original strength a lot faster than I did. And as a consequence, I talked about this in my video last week, I pushed myself way too hard with how much weight I was using when I started lifting. And I definitely started doing a little bit of ego lifting where I I felt like I should be as strong as I had been before I took a break from exercise, and so I was pushing myself to be that strong, when in fact that was so much more than my body needed to make progress. And anytime you're trying to progress with exercise, you should be doing the least amount that's going to elicit change. At the height of my strength, after a 3-month reverse diet, I think I was peaking at like maybe 9 pull-ups for 3 sets. And I was trying to get back there as soon as I could. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do 3 sets of 8 pull-ups every time I do pull-ups. I couldn't do 3 sets of 8 pull-ups, but I was convincing myself that that's what I should be doing because that's what I used to be able to do. And I kind of felt like if I can't do that among the other things I was trying to do, like, I'm not as good as I used to be. What's so important to remember on a journey like this is that when you're lifting, heavy is relative. If you're trying to lift heavy and I'm trying to lift heavy and someone else is trying to lift heavy, that's gonna look different for 3 different people. It all comes down to what your body currently perceives as heavy. That is all you need to elicit the change that lifting heavy should elicit. The only person you need to be trying to be better than is the person that you were yesterday. Not even the person that you were a year ago, like I was trying to do. Starting off out the gate lifting heavier than I needed to make progress demotivated me, it fatigued my body, and it made it impossible for me to actually progress with my lifting because I was pushing myself basically to failure, to like 100%. And when you're pushing yourself to 100%, your body can't recover as well as it needs to for you to be able to slowly increase. Like, let's say this is 100% of your capacity. You're squatting 100 pounds, 3 sets, 10 reps. That is as much as you can do. You cannot do another set, you cannot do another rep. If you're trying to do this much, your body can probably only recover from like this much, which means you're constantly doing this much too much. And this much here is gonna be taken off of the progress that you would otherwise be able to make. And this is a mistake that I see people making all of the time. They want to push themselves to the max, feel like they're dead when they finish their workout, feel like they left everything on the floor. And this is not the way to get the best results. The intensity of your workouts is like Goldilocks. You don't want it to be too little, you don't want it to be too much, you want it to be just right. And pushing yourself to your max effort, unless you're doing like literally a HIIT workout where you're supposed to be working at like 95% of your max intensity, you're not gonna be able to progress as fast as you would if you push yourself the right amount. The next mistake I made honestly wasn't really a mistake. It was kind of an intentional oversight that I was kind of just being too lazy, not motivated enough to take into account. I don't know. I knew I was making this mistake as I was making it, but I went along and made it anyway. And that was not adjusting my training and my nutrition based on lifestyle changes. I had weeks where I didn't work out. I had weeks that I worked out 5 days a week. I didn't adjust my calories accordingly. I just kept trotting along like nothing had changed with my training routine, expecting that I was gonna get the same results. Like, what? And I feel like this is a super obvious one. Like, you know, if you start training less, obviously you're gonna have to eat less, or else you're not gonna be in as much of a deficit, or your maintenance is gonna be lower. But I also see people making this mistake all the time. Like, this is not just me, I think. But no, like, I actually see people saying like, oh yeah, I was losing weight on 1,500 calories and now I'm not. What has happened? And I'm like, well, what has happened? And they're like, well, I haven't trained in 3 weeks. And it's like, well, that's why. The takeaway is just to be aware if things are changing and adjust the other factors as necessary. So, you know, if you have a week where you eat extra for some reason, maybe it's the holidays or whatever, if you want to stay in a calorie deficit for that week, you're gonna have to move a little bit extra. If you've been moving a little bit less for whatever reason, you're gonna have to eat a little bit less to still be in a deficit. But this also applies to shifts in sleep and stress. If you're like super stressed and getting horrible sleep one week, that's probably not a good week to even try to be in a deficit. You should probably just make that a maintenance week, call it a wash, and move on. It's really important to listen to your body and pay attention to the other life shifts that are happening around you and adjust your programming accordingly. The 5th mistake I made, I don't know if it's as applicable to everyone, but I have a feeling some people have also gone through this, and that was not taking time to work on the mindset shifts that were necessary. I had not tracked calories in over a year, and I thought it was gonna be an easy transition to just switch back into the calorie counting mode, because in the past I've been really good at it. Like, it's been a very easy thing for me to do. But it definitely this time got into my head a little bit more than it did before. And I think it was because I immediately started tracking in order to be in a deficit. So in my head, I was associating tracking with some amount of restriction, as opposed to just seeing tracking as a tool. You know, it's just a tool to measure your calorie intake. And so if I had done things the right way and maybe not made this mistake, I think if I could do it over, basically, I would start by just tracking for a while, maybe for like a month or two, just to get back in the habit of it, get used to seeing those numbers in relation to food again before immediately seeing those numbers in relation to I can't go over certain numbers. I was honestly very shocked to see how differently tracking affected me this time. In the past, it has never been an issue. I have never felt restricted. I've never felt like I needed to continue to restrict further and further and further to account for whatever. Like, I've never had a disordered relationship with tracking at all. And this time when I started tracking, I don't want to say it was like a disordered relationship with it, but it felt different. I wasn't used to it. I think it made me feel more restricted than tracking ever had in the past. And so staying in a positive mindset about fat loss in general throughout this process was difficult for me. And so that's why I wanted to include that in this list of like my 5 biggest mistakes, because I think if I had given my brain the appropriate time to transition back into counting calories, everything else would have kind of fallen into place a lot easier. Like, if your mindset is not in the right place, you're not gonna be able to implement the steps that you need to, whether it be that tracking is making you feel restricted, or whether it be like a much more deeper rooted issue, like, you know, not feeling like you deserve to lose fat or deserve to feel better, or being scared about what success might mean for you. You know, if you get your ideal body but you're still not happy with your life, like, what is that gonna mean? Like, that's a fear that I see with a lot of people. And so I really recommend starting off your journey by addressing those mindset shifts first before you dive headfirst into everything else. So those are the 5 big mistakes that I've made in the last couple months that have basically prevented me from losing fat. Now, where does that leave me? I think it's important to go back to mistake number 1 and address all the stuff there. Because if I continue trying to lose fat, I'm just gonna keep making that mistake, because I still don't have my period back. There is a high chance that I still have some cortisol regulation stuff going on. And so if I keep trying to push my body to lose fat at this point, I might just mess things up a lot farther. So I think what I wanna do, and this is not like a final, here's what I'm definitely doing, but what I'm thinking about right now is just focusing purely on getting my period back, having a regular cycle, making sure all my hormones are in order. If I don't get my period at the 3-month mark, that's technically amenorrhea. It is post-pill amenorrhea, so it's not altogether unexpected, but 3 months without a period is amenorrhea. And so if I hit that point, I'm gonna get some hormone panels done just to see where I need the work, and then I will work specifically on that. Once I am at a healthier, more balanced place with my hormones, then I may look into fat loss again. My theory is, and I've seen this happen in a lot of my clients and a lot of other people, is that if I just focus on my health, which is literally what I said in mistake number 1, if I just focus on my health, the aesthetics should follow. I would not be at all surprised if I just naturally started to lose weight once I get my period back and once my cortisol starts being a little bit more regular. Again, I had no way of knowing that this was an issue when I started my journey, so I don't blame myself for doing things the way that I did, but now that I know what I know, I definitely don't want to continue to make these mistakes. I started Project Comeback with all of you guys 2 weeks ago, and I have been making sure to keep my weight low, keep it to the point where I know I'm getting a good workout, but I'm not pushing myself more than I need to. I have been using that program to hold myself accountable and build consistency, just in trying to get my workouts in and having like a set schedule for myself that I feel comfortable and confident in following. So once I have my expectations in check, once I have the consistency built, and once I have my health back, then I think I can really focus on fat loss again. And I think I will start that by specifically doing the mindset work and maybe just tracking a little bit, getting used to that again before putting myself in a calorie deficit. We'll see where this goes. As it is right now, I don't know what my hormones are doing, so I have no idea how long it is gonna take to get my period back. I don't know if that's gonna end up being like a whole other battle in itself. I'll keep you guys updated. Do let me know down in the comments what some mistakes you've made along your health and fitness journey have been. It doesn't have to be fat loss related, just any mistakes that you retrospectively have realized were not the best decision at the time and what you've learned from it. That way we can all read the comments, learn from each other, and not make the same mistakes. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I hope it also kind of helps show you that, you know, even though I know what I'm doing, if I were coaching myself, I would have known what to say to myself, and I probably would have prevented myself from making these mistakes. When it's me with me, I still make the mistakes. Even though I have the knowledge, my execution is not perfect, but that's okay. It's all part of the journey. We're all growing, we're all learning. This is getting way too deep, but in my opinion, the goal of life is not to like achieve happiness and stay there. It's to constantly grow and constantly learn. And it's that growth that is the meaning of life. And on that note, with the meaning of life defined for you, you're very welcome. I think it's time to end this video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Please do share it with your friends, your family, stick on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. If you want to see more videos from me, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little notification bell so you get notified when I post a future video, and I will see you very soon. Bye.